There are paths that no map has ever held, roads that do not belong to land nor sky, but exist somewhere in between. Paths walked not by many, but by one who never truly stops moving. He does not stay, he does not settle, he does not belong to any single place. For his world is not one of stillness, but of quiet passage, of movement so constant it becomes calm. He walks between realms, between the living and the unseen, between what is known and what is forgotten, a messenger, a guide, a traveller without end. This is the story of Hermes, the one who moves through all worlds, yet remains, unseen, in them all. If this kind of storytelling brings you inner peace, feel free to like the video and subscribe, but only if it truly brings you peace. And let me know in the comments where in the world are you listening from, and what time it is for you right now. It's always strangely comforting to know who else is out there closing their eyes to the same story. So settle in, let the world grow quiet, and let's dream together for a while. Before there were roads, there was only distance. It lay across the early world like a quiet question, unanswered, unmeasured, without edge or end. The mountains stood where they had risen, their bones still warm from the making. Rivers wandered without memory, shaping themselves in the absence of intention. Forests breathed, slow and deep, roots pressing into the dark with no knowledge of direction, nothing yet connected, nothing yet led anywhere. The sky arched above in a long, unbroken silence. Light passed across it as if it had nowhere to arrive. Night followed without urgency. There was no sense of departure, no hint of return. Even the gods, in those first ages, existed in a kind of stillness, present, immense, but untouched by the idea of movement as purpose. To move is not simply to go from one place to another, it is to recognize that there are places. It is to feel the quiet pull of something beyond the horizon, something not yet seen, but already known in the bones. In the beginning, that knowing had not yet awakened. There were no crossings, no thresholds, no edges where one thing ended and another began. The world was whole, but it was a wholeness without distinction, like a dream that has not yet separated into images. Without boundaries, there could be no passing between them. And so, the earth remained untravelled. Time moved, but it did not carry anything with it. It drifted, like mist over water, unnoticed. The seasons did not yet turn in cycles, they unfolded once, slowly, without repetition. A leaf might fall, but it did not mark the beginning of anything, nor the end. It simply descended, alone in its motion. It is difficult to imagine a world without paths, because paths are not merely lines upon the ground, they are decisions remembered. They are the echo of footsteps that have chosen a direction and returned to it again and again, until the earth itself begins to yield, to soften, to hold the shape of passage. But there had been no first step. No one had yet felt the need to leave one place in order to reach another. The gods dwelled where they arose, bound not by chains but by the absence of desire to depart. The mortal world, still forming beneath them, mirrored this quiet immobility. Creatures stirred, but they did not wander far. There was no reason to. Without paths, there is no story of travel. Without travel, there is no story of change. And yet, beneath the stillness, something subtle began to shift. It did not announce itself. It did not break the silence. It moved within it, like a current beneath unmoving water. A restlessness, faint and almost imperceptible, passed through the fabric of the world. Not a disturbance, something gentler. A suggestion, a question formed where no questions had existed before. What lies beyond? It did not belong to any one being. It was not spoken, nor thought in any single mind. It was a feeling that brushed against everything at once, the stone, the root, the wind, the distant line where earth met sky. It lingered there, barely felt, but impossible to erase once it had arrived. The first movement does not begin with motion. It begins with awareness. Somewhere, far from where anything had ever gone, the horizon seemed to deepen. It was not a change of shape, but of meaning. It was no longer simply the end of sight. It became a boundary, a place that might be crossed. And in that quiet transformation, the world drew its first breath of distance. The rivers began to remember their own flow, not merely moving, but moving toward. The wind traced longer arcs across the land, as if testing the idea of return. Even the shadows seemed to stretch, as though they were reaching for something just beyond themselves. Still, there were no paths. Not yet. But the ground had begun to listen. It listened for the weight of a step that had not yet fallen. It waited for the imprint of intention, for the moment when movement would cease to be wandering and become passage. The earth, patient and unhurried, held itself open to the possibility. In the unseen spaces between presence and absence, something gathered. Not a form, not yet a voice, but a direction. A sense that the world was not meant to remain as it was, that its stillness was only the surface of a deeper unfolding, that there would come a figure not bound to any single place, not rooted like the mountains or fixed like the stars, but carried by the space between them. A traveller, before there were roads. The silence did not break when this possibility emerged. It deepened, as if the world itself were listening for footsteps that had not yet begun. The first movement did not begin with a step. It began with a pause that lingered slightly longer than all those before it. In the quiet fabric of the world, where nothing yet departed from its place, something held itself differently, less certain, less settled. The stillness, once complete, began to loosen at its edges. Not broken, but softened, as if it had grown aware of its own limits. The horizon, once only a distant line, became something that called without sound. There is a subtle distinction between being and becoming. In the earliest age, the world had only known the former. Everything existed fully where it was, without need, without absence. But now, a space appeared between what was and what might be. A narrow distance, almost invisible, but impossible to close once perceived. This distance was not empty. It was filled with the quiet weight of possibility. The rivers felt it first. Their waters, once content to flow without direction, began to gather a sense of purpose. They curved more deliberately, as though listening to something beyond their own course. Their movement became less like drifting and more like seeking, though they did not yet know what they sought. The wind followed. It traced longer paths across the earth, no longer circling in soft, aimless patterns. It passed over stone and root and sleeping soil with a new kind of awareness, as if it were mapping something that had not yet been drawn. It began to remember where it had been. Memory is the beginning of movement, for without memory there is no return, and without return there is no path. Even the light, falling across the land, seemed to hesitate as it shifted. It lingered on edges, on the line between shadow and form, as though recognizing the significance of boundaries for the first time. The world, once seamless, began to reveal its divisions, and where there are divisions, there is the possibility of crossing. The first movement was not a journey. It was an awareness of separation. A stone rested where it had always been, but now it felt the weight of the space beside it. A tree stretched its branches, not merely upward, but outward, as though reaching beyond its own form. The earth itself seemed to draw inward and outward at once, as if preparing for something it could not yet name. It is easy to imagine movement as force, a sudden breaking, a rush forward, a departure filled with urgency. But the earliest movement was none of these things. It was gentle, almost reluctant, a quiet leaning towards something unseen. A beginning without departure. There were no footsteps, no traveller crossed the land. And yet, something had already begun to move. In the unseen layers of the world, beneath what could be touched or held, a current formed. It did not follow any path, for none existed. It did not seek an end, for there was no destination. It simply moved because stillness could no longer contain it. This movement had no name. It belonged to no god, no creature, no place. And yet it touched all things. It passed through the spaces between stones. It slipped through the gaps in the roots of trees. It moved along the surface of water and through the depth of shadow. Wherever there was a boundary, however faint, it found its way across it. And in doing so, it revealed something the world had not yet understood, that there are places not defined by what they are, but by what lies between them. These spaces, thin, shifting, almost without substance, began to gather meaning. They were not destinations, they could not be held or named. But they allowed passage, they allowed connection, they allowed movement to become more than motion. The world, once whole and unmoving, had begun to open. And in that opening, something else began to take shape, not in form, but in presence. A sense of awareness that belonged not to the places themselves, but to the act of passing between them. It did not rest. It did not settle. It existed only in transition, in the moment of crossing from one state to another. If the mountains were permanence and the rivers were change, this presence was neither. It was the space between permanence and change. It was the threshold. The first movement did not create a traveller, but it made one possible, and possibility, once awakened, does not return to sleep. The world did not yet know his name, but it had begun to prepare for him in the quiet places where boundaries met, where light touched shadow, where water met land, where the known pressed gently against the unknown. The unseen current gathered strength. Not force, not urgency, but continuity. A movement that did not end, because it did not seek to arrive. A movement that would one day wear form, take voice, and walk the spaces that were only now beginning to exist. Until then, it remained what it had always been in its earliest moment, a whisper between stillness and motion. The first hint that the world was no longer content to remain in place. Some births gather the world inward. This one loosened it. In a quiet fold of Arcadia, where the hills lean into shadow and the air settles with a deeper patience, Maya withdrew from the wide attention of the gods. She was of a quieter lineage, a daughter of night who preferred the spaces that are half seen and rarely named. Her dwelling was a cave shaped by time, stone-curved, dim and listening. It was a place meant to hold, yet what came into it would not be held for long. When Hermes was born, nothing broke. The silence did not shatter, it shifted, almost imperceptibly, as if a new passage had opened within it. There was no cry to mark his arrival. Instead, there was a change in the way the air moved, subtle, like a current slipping through still water. He lay for a moment, and even that moment seemed borrowed. His small body rested, but his presence did not settle. It extended, faintly, gently, into the spaces just beyond him, as though the distance between things had already begun to recognize him. His eyes opened without hesitation, clear and untroubled, carrying a quiet familiarity with a world he had not yet crossed. Maya watched without speaking. There was no tightening around him, no drawing close. If anything, the space within the cave widened. Some births create nearness. This one made room. He did not anchor to her. He did not anchor at all. Outside, the early world had begun to learn the idea of movement. Rivers curved with a soft intention. The wind traced longer arcs, remembering where it had passed. The horizon held a depth that suggested it might be crossed. The world, without knowing it, had been preparing. Within the cave, that preparation took form. Time did not gather around him in steady layers. It seemed to open all at once, like a path glimpsed before it is walked. The interval between moments did not confine him. It unfolded. And so he rose. There was no effort in it, no uncertainty. Standing was not learned, it was simply not delayed. He moved with a quiet assurance, guided by something that did not require memory or instruction, an inward direction that asked for no explanation. Before him lay the threshold, a soft division between shadow and open light. For others, a boundary might demand pause. For him, it invited passage. He crossed. The world beyond did not change its face to greet him. Light moved across the land. Wind passed over stone and root. The distant line of sky remained where it had always been, and yet as his foot met the earth, something altered in the way the earth received him. The contact was light, almost without weight, yet it carried intention. It did not press down to claim. It moved across, leaving not a mark but a memory, an impression of passage rather than presence. He did not turn back toward the cave. Maya remained within its dim curve, watching without calling. Nothing was severed, nothing needed to be. What had begun was not separation, but continuation. He moved. The air adjusted around him, not yielding, not resisting, but aligning to a rhythm it seemed to recognize. The wind, which had been learning its own wandering, found in him a quiet companion. Not something to follow, but something that revealed the shape of movement itself. This was not wandering, it was continuity. He passed through the hillside, as though it were not a place to remain, but a moment within a longer unfolding. Each step did not end where it fell. It extended, invisibly, into the next, linking what had been to what would be, without pause or fracture. In him, the earlier stirring of the world, the faint current that moved between stillness and change, found a body through which it could be known. What had been a whisper became a presence, not fixed, not held, but perceivable. He did not belong to the cave, nor to the slope, nor to the open sky. Each received him only briefly, as though understanding that he was not meant to stay. Even the light that touched him did not linger. It moved on, as he did, tracing without keeping. No name had yet gathered around him. No title had formed to contain him. Those would come later, shaped by those who tried to understand what cannot be kept in a single meaning. For now, he remained something simpler, and more difficult to hold. He was motion without urgency. He was presence without weight. He was the act of crossing, given form. Behind him, the cave returned to its quiet, though it no longer held the same stillness. Maya remained, not in loss, but in recognition. Some births are departures that do not break what they leave. Across the early land, his passing changed nothing that could be seen at once, and yet, beneath the surface, something gathered. The spaces between places grew more defined. Distance took on texture. The ground, touched by his movement, began to remember. Not as a line cut into its surface, but as a readiness to be crossed again. The day did not close around him. It did not resolve into rest. It continued, as he did, one motion flowing into another, without clear boundary, without final pause. And in the quiet awareness of the world, a recognition began to take hold. Movement had found its bearer, not as force, not as change alone, but as something that could pass between all things without belonging to any of them, a traveller. not shaped by where he began, but by the fact that he would never truly arrive. There are beings who belong to places, and there are those for whom place is only a moment. From the beginning, Hermes did not settle into the world the way other gods did. Olympus would one day hold many of them, gathered in height, fixed in their domains, defined by what they governed. But Hermes did not rise toward a throne, nor root himself in a single realm. Even as an infant, his presence moved through spaces as though they were never meant to contain him. The hillside that received his first steps did not become his home. It became a memory the moment he left it. Movement, for him, was not reaction. It was not driven by desire or necessity. It did not come from restlessness, as mortals would later understand it. It was something quieter, more constant, like breath, or the turning of light across the earth. He moved because movement was what he was. The early world had only begun to understand the idea of paths. The ground softened under repeated passage, learning slowly how to hold the memory of direction. But Hermes did not wait for paths to form beneath him. He moved before they existed, and in doing so, he made their existence possible. Each place he crossed did not bind him. It opened, briefly, and then released him again. Forests did not enclose him. Rivers did not delay him. Even distance itself seemed to lose its weight in his presence, as though the space between things had become thinner, more permeable. There are those who travel to arrive. Hermes travelled without arrival. He did not carry a destination within him. There was no final point toward which his movement was directed. Instead, each step became its own completion, an ending that was also a beginning, a crossing that did not resolve into rest. In this way, he existed not within places, but between them. The gods would come to recognize this, though not all would understand it. They saw his movement and gave it purpose, messenger, guide, bringer of words. These names were not untrue, but they were attempts to give shape to something that resisted being fixed. For Hermes, carrying a message was not a task. It was a continuation of what he already was. When he passed from one realm to another, from the bright air of Olympus to the shifting lands of mortals, from the living world toward the unseen depths, he did not change. Only the surroundings altered. He remained the same quiet passage moving through them all. Even as a child, this nature revealed itself in subtle ways. He did not linger where he had just been. If he paused, it was not to remain, but to listen, to the faint pull of somewhere else, somewhere not yet reached. His stillness was never complete. It held within it the suggestion of the next motion already forming. To watch him was to understand that stillness itself could contain movement. Maya, in the quiet of her cave, knew this without naming it. She did not call him back, nor attempt to shape his path. Some presences cannot be guided. They guide by passing. The world, too, began to respond. The spaces he crossed grew more defined, as though his passage had drawn their edges into clarity. The idea of a boundary, once faint, almost unreal, gained weight. Not as a barrier, but as a place of transition. And where there is transition, there must be one who crosses it. Hermes did not resist this role. He did not accept it either. It simply unfolded around him, the way wind gathers around a moving form without being held by it. He became known in motion, not in presence. To encounter him was not to find him waiting. It was to feel that he had just passed, or was about to. His presence lingered not as a fixed point, but as a trace something felt in the shift of air, in the subtle alignment of space, in the sense that the distance between two places had briefly grown smaller. This is how he entered awareness, not as a figure that could be grasped, but as a passage that could be felt. Even the concept of belonging seemed to loosen in his presence. He belonged nowhere in the way others did, and yet he was never absent. Wherever there was a crossing, of land, of thought, of life into death or word into meaning, he was there, not as an observer, but as the crossing itself. A God who could not stay still is not one who refuses to rest. He is one for whom rest has no meaning. The world, in its slow unfolding, began to shape itself around this truth. Roads would one day appear, worn into the earth by repeated passage. Boundaries would be marked, thresholds named, crossings recognised. But before all of this, there was Hermes, moving. Not quickly, not slowly, but continuously. And in that continuity, the world learned that it was no longer a place of stillness. It had become a place of passage. A journey is often remembered by where it ends. His was defined by the fact that it did not. There was no moment when Hermes chose to begin. No gathering of purpose, no clear departure from one place toward another. The first journey did not start with intention. It unfolded the way light moves across the land, inevitable, quiet, and without announcement. He had already stepped beyond the cave, already crossed the first threshold without hesitation. But what followed was something more subtle than movement alone. It was the shaping of distance into passage. The land before him did not present itself as a destination. It offered itself as a sequence of openings, spaces that received him and then released him again. The hills rose and fell without asking him to remain. The trees parted their shadows without enclosing him. Even the air seemed to hold him only lightly, as if aware that he would not be kept. He did not look ahead in search of an end. He moved within the unfolding. The rivers he encountered were no longer aimless in their flow. They curved with a quiet intention, as though they too were learning the idea of direction. When Hermes reached their banks, he did not pause in consideration. The water did not resist him. It seemed to recognize in him a kindred motion, a continuity that mirrored its own. He crossed without breaking the surface into struggle, and on the far side, nothing marked the crossing as complete. There was no boundary that held him, no moment where passage became arrival. The river became part of what he had moved through, not something left behind. This was the nature of his journey. It did not divide the world into before and after. It connected what had never been separate. As he moved, the ground beneath him began to change. Not in visible lines, not in carved paths, but in memory. The earth, once untouched by repeated passage, began to soften in subtle ways. It held the echo of his steps, not as marks to be seen, but as a readiness to receive him again. The first journey does not create a road, it teaches the ground to remember. The wind followed him, though not as a companion. It traced the spaces he passed through, lingering for a moment before continuing on its own unseen course. The horizon, once distant and unreachable, seemed to draw closer, not because it moved, but because the distance between had begun to lose its weight. Hermes did not measure the space he crossed. He dissolved it. There were no witnesses to name this journey, no voices to give it form in story. It unfolded in quiet, observed only by the land itself, which was learning, slowly, what it meant to be traversed. Time, too, shifted around him. It no longer drifted without direction. It gathered itself along his movement, shaping into something that could be followed, something that could be remembered. The idea of sequence, of one moment leading into another, began to take hold. But Hermes did not follow time. Time followed him. He moved through open fields where the light rested longer, and through shaded groves where silence held a deeper weight. Each place received him briefly, then released him without resistance. There was no tension in his passing, no sense of intrusion. It was as though the world had always been waiting for something like this, not a traveller seeking an end, but a presence that revealed the meaning of passage itself. At times, he slowed, not to rest, but to listen. There were moments when the movement within him aligned so completely with the stillness around him that the two became indistinguishable. In those moments, it was unclear whether he was moving through the world or the world was moving through him. Stillness, for Hermes, was not the absence of motion. It was motion without visible change. The first journey did not conclude. It did not circle back to its beginning, nor did it arrive at a place that could contain it. It extended, quietly, into every step that followed. What had begun as a single crossing became something more enduring, a pattern that would repeat, not as a loop, but as a continuation. A way of being within the world. The spaces he passed through grew more defined, their edges clearer, their boundaries more perceptible. Not as barriers, but as invitations, points where one state gave way to another, where crossing became possible. And in every crossing, Hermes was present, not as a figure standing at the edge, but as the edge itself. The journey did not belong to him alone. It began to belong to the world. Every movement that followed, every step taken by those who would come after, would carry something of this first passage within it. Not in memory, but in structure. In the quiet understanding that to move is not only to leave, but to connect. Hermes did not turn back to see what he had begun. He did not need to. The journey was not behind him. It was wherever he was moving next. A road is not merely a line upon the earth. It is an agreement between places. Before Hermes, the world held distance, but not connection. The spaces between realms, sky and earth, mortal and divine, living and unseen, existed, but they did not speak to one another. They touched, perhaps, at their edges, but they did not open. Hermes did not create these spaces. He revealed that they could be crossed. As his movement continued, something subtle began to take shape. Not in the ground alone, but in the nature of the world itself. The divisions that once seemed absolute began to soften. The boundary between Olympus and the land below grew less like a wall and more like a veil. The unseen depths beneath the earth no longer rested in complete separation from the world above. The roads between worlds did not appear all at once. They emerged as quiet recognitions. A slope that seemed easier to descend. A clearing where the air felt thinner, as though something beyond it waited. A place where shadow lingered longer than it should, not as absence of light, but as a presence of something deeper. These were not roads in the way mortals would later understand them. They were thresholds, and Hermes moved through them as though they had always been open. When he crossed from the high air of the gods to the breathing world of mortals, there was no strain in the passage. The distance did not weigh upon him. The shift was seamless, like passing from one thought into another. The divine did not resist his entry into the mortal, nor did the mortal recoil from his presence. He did not belong to either. He belonged to the crossing. This is why he could move where others could not. The gods, though vast and powerful, were often bound by their own domains. Each held a place, a function, a sphere of influence that defined their presence. To leave it was to diminish themselves, or to enter into a space not meant for them. But Hermes was not defined by a domain. He was defined by passage. The underworld, still distant and untravelled by most, lay beneath the surface of the living world like a second horizon. It was not yet a place of frequent crossing. It remained closed, silent, holding its own form of stillness. And yet, even there, the possibility of a road began to form. Hermes did not descend fully, not yet, but he moved along the edges where the living world thinned, where the air grew heavier, where sound seemed to quiet itself. These were the first hints of a boundary that could be crossed. The roads between worlds are not built in stone, they are felt. A shift in the air, a change in the weight of silence, a sense that the place one stands is not entirely what it appears to be. Wherever such moments occurred, Hermes was present, not as a guide, not yet, but as the quiet certainty that passage was possible. The world began to adjust to this truth. The horizon no longer marked an ending. It became a place of transition. The sky was not separate from the earth, but in conversation with it. Even the unseen depths below seemed less distant, less unreachable. What had once been divided began, slowly, to overlap, and in those overlaps the roads formed. Hermes did not map them, he did not name them, he did not mark them with signs or symbols. His movement alone was enough. Each crossing made the next more possible, each passage deepened the connection between realms. This is how roads are born, not from design, but from repetition, from the quiet insistence that what lies between can be traversed. To follow Hermes would have been impossible, not because he moved too quickly, but because he did not leave a fixed trail. The roads he opened did not remain in the same form. They shifted, adapted, existed only in the moment of crossing. This is why they belonged to him, not as possessions, but as reflections of what he was. A fixed road can be walked by anyone. A shifting road requires a different kind of presence. Hermes moved through these in-between spaces with a kind of ease that did not come from mastery, but from alignment. He did not impose himself upon the world. He moved with it, within it, as though he and the spaces he crossed were part of the same unfolding. And so, the roads between worlds remained quiet, unseen by most, but always there, waiting for the one who would pass through them, not to arrive, not to claim, but simply to continue, as Hermes did, endlessly. Not all movement belongs to the body, some of it is carried. In time, the motion that lived within Hermes found an outward form, something that could be seen, though never fully understood. It did not bind him. It did not grant him what he did not already possess. It revealed, instead, what had always been true. At his feet, the sandals took shape. They were not crafted in the manner of mortal things. No hand shaped them with effort. No fire hardened them into permanence. They seemed to arrive as quietly as he had, an extension of his nature rather than an addition to it. Light gathered around them, not in brightness, but in a subtle quickness, as though the air itself had learned to move more freely in their presence. They did not make him faster. They made speed unnecessary. For Hermes had never moved by force. His passage was not a contest with distance, not a race against time. The sandals did not urge him forward. They removed the weight that might have slowed others. Where the ground might hold, they released. Where space might resist, they opened. He stepped, and the distance yielded. To those who would later speak of them, they became symbols, winged, light, adorned with the suggestion of flight. But the wings were not for rising above the world, they were for remaining within it, without being held by it. The sandals did not lift him away, they allowed him to pass through. Across stone and field, over river and shifting air, his movement became even more seamless. The places he crossed did not cling to him. The ground did not gather his weight. It received him, briefly, and let him go without resistance, as though the act of touching and leaving had become one motion. There is a difference between moving upon the world and moving within it. Hermes did not tread as others would. He did not press his presence into the earth. He moved across it as though it were part of a larger current, something flowing rather than fixed. The sandals did not rest, because he did not. Even in moments where his body seemed still, the sense of movement remained. The air around him held a quiet vibration, a suggestion that stillness was only a surface beneath which motion continued without pause. To see him standing was to see a pause, not an end, and even that pause was already passing. The world began to feel this more clearly. Wherever Hermes moved, the distances between places seemed to shorten, not in measure, but in experience. A journey that might have felt long became something lighter, more fluid. The idea of separation weakened. The spaces between points became less like barriers and more like transitions waiting to be crossed. It was not that he erased distance. He changed its nature. The sandals, though visible, were not separate from this. They were a language the world could recognize, a way of understanding what could not be held in words. Through them, others might glimpse what Hermes embodied: movement without burden, passage without obstruction. But they could not follow it as he did, for the sandals were not tools, they were alignment. A mortal might walk the same ground, step where Hermes had stepped, and still feel the weight of distance pressing upon them. The road would stretch, the journey would lengthen, and time would gather around their movement. For Hermes, none of this held. The sandals did not free him from the world. They revealed that he had never been bound by it. There are stories that would later speak of him crossing vast spaces in moments, appearing where he was needed and vanishing again before he could be fully seen. These stories attempt to measure what cannot be measured, to give shape to emotion that does not belong to ordinary time. But to watch him closely, if such a thing were possible, would show something quieter. He did not hurry. He did not rush to arrive. His movement was continuous, unbroken, flowing from one place into another without tension. The sandals did not drive this motion. They moved with it, as naturally as wind moves with open sky. Even the boundaries between realms seemed to respond more readily in his presence. The crossing from one state to another, seen to unseen, above to below, became less rigid, more permeable. The sandals touched these thresholds lightly, and they opened, not for long, but long enough. This was their nature. Not to conquer distance, but to dissolve it. Not to escape the world, but to move through it without being held. And so Hermes continued, his steps carrying him across spaces that were no longer entirely separate, his passage leaving behind not marks, but possibilities. The sandals did not wear with time. They did not gather dust or weight, for they were not objects that endured. They were motion, given form. And motion, once awakened, does not come to rest. A message is a bridge between two silences. It begins where one voice ends and waits for another to receive it. Before Hermes, the gods existed in their own vastness, each contained within their domain. Their will was powerful, their presence undeniable, but what they spoke did not always travel. Thought remained where it was formed, intention lingered, bound to the place that gave it shape. The distance between gods was not measured in space, it was measured in separation. Hermes did not change what they said, he changed that it could be carried. When he began to move between Olympus and the world below, his passage did more than connect places, it connected meaning. A word spoken in one realm no longer remained there. It could cross, arrive, and take form elsewhere. This is how he became known, not by declaration, but by recognition. A presence felt when something moved from one place to another without losing itself. The gods did not gather to name him messenger. They began to rely on him. There is a difference. To send a message is to trust the space between 2 points. It is to believe that what leaves will arrive. Before Hermes, that space held uncertainty. With him, it became passage. He did not carry messages as burdens. He did not hold them in the way mortals hold words, preserving them with care, fearing their loss. For Hermes, a message was not an object to be transported. It was motion itself. He received without holding. He delivered without keeping. A word given to him did not remain within him. It moved through him, as wind moves through an open field, touching, passing, continuing. In this way, the message was never delayed, never altered by weight or time. It simply crossed. When he moved between the high stillness of Olympus and the shifting world of mortals, there was no strain in the passage. The divine did not diminish in descent, nor did the mortal world reject what arrived from above. The crossing was seamless, not because the worlds were the same, but because Hermes belonged to neither. He was the space between them, made visible. The gods began to speak with the knowledge that their words could travel. This changed something quiet but profound. Intention no longer rested in isolation. It extended outward, reaching beyond its origin. In time, this would shape the world itself. For a message does more than move, it connects. It creates a line, invisible but real, between one place and another. And where such lines gather, something like a network begins to form, not of roads, but of meaning. Hermes moved within this unseen network as naturally as he moved across land and sky. He did not follow fixed routes. Each message shaped its own path, and he followed it, not as a guide, but as its embodiment. To those who received what he carried, his presence was fleeting. He was not a figure that lingered at the threshold, explaining or interpreting. He arrived, the message arrived with him, and then both passed on. What remained was not him, but what had been delivered. This is the nature of true passage. It does not draw attention to itself. It leaves behind connection. Even the silence after a message bore his trace. It was not the same silence as before. Something had moved through it, altered its shape, left behind a quiet awareness that it had once been bridged. The role of messenger did not bind Hermes. It revealed him. For in every act of carrying, he was not performing a task. He was continuing what he had always been, the movement between what is said and what is heard, between intention and arrival. He did not belong to the sender. He did not belong to the receiver. He belonged to the crossing itself. And so the gods spoke, and their words no longer remained where they began. They moved, as he did, endlessly. A word once spoken does not remain where it begins. It leans outward, seeking a place to arrive. Before Hermes, words lingered close to their origin. Even when uttered by gods, they held a kind of stillness, vast in meaning, yet confined to the space that gave them voice. Intention existed, but its reach was uncertain. A command might echo, a promise might endure, but neither could easily cross the quiet distances that separated one realm from another. Hermes altered this without altering the words themselves. He gave them passage. When a word was entrusted to him, it did not settle in his keeping. It did not weigh upon him or ask to be preserved. It moved through him, as breath moves through the body, unseen, continuous, already on its way to becoming something else. In this way, a message was not something he carried. It was something that carried itself through him. Across Olympus, where the air held a still brightness, and down into the shifting lands of mortals, where sound gathered and dispersed like wind, Hermes moved without interruption. The difference between realms did not alter the words. It revealed them. For a word changes as it arrives, not in meaning, but in presence. Spoken among gods, it holds one weight, clear, unbroken, almost without resistance. Received among mortals, it takes on another, shaped by time, by memory, by the quiet uncertainty of those who listen. Hermes did not resolve this difference. He allowed it. He did not translate. He delivered. There are moments when he appears at the edge of awareness, a figure just within sight, a presence felt more than seen. The message arrives with him, not before, not after, but as part of his passing. And then he is gone, leaving behind not himself, but the space in which the word now exists. This is how meaning begins to travel, not as a fixed object, but as a movement that takes on new forms as it crosses from one place to another. The gods began to understand this slowly. Their words, once bound to their origin, now extended beyond it. A decree could reach the earth below. A warning could pass into the unseen. Even silence, when carried by Hermes, could arrive as something that spoke without sound. For not all messages are spoken. Some are felt, a change in the air before a storm, a stillness that settles where movement had been, a presence that lingers just long enough to suggest that something has passed through. Hermes carried these as well, though they left no trace that could be named. In the mortal world, those who listened carefully began to sense this quiet crossing. They did not always see him. Often, they could not, but they felt the moment when a thought that was not their own entered their awareness, when a word seemed to arrive rather than be formed. They gave this many meanings. But the movement remained the same. Hermes did not choose which words to carry based on their weight or importance. A command from a god and a whisper from a distant mind were equal in his passage. Both were movements seeking completion. Both required a crossing. He did not judge. He did not hold. He passed them on. And in this passing, something subtle began to form across the world, a web of unseen connections linking one place to another, one voice to another, one silence to another. These connections did not remain fixed. They shifted, adapted, appeared and disappeared as needed. Hermes moved within them effortlessly. He was not bound to any single path, because the paths themselves were not fixed. Each word created its own way forward, and he followed it, not as a guide, but as the act of following itself. To carry a word across realms is to trust that it will be received. Hermes did not question this trust. He embodied it, and so the world changed, not in its shape, but in its depth. What had once been separate began to feel connected. The distance between realms remained, but it no longer held the same silence. Something moved within it now, quietly, continuously. A word spoken in one place could arrive in another. A thought could cross into awareness. A silence could be shared. And in every crossing, Hermes was there, not as a presence to be held, but as the movement that made the crossing possible. He did not remain with the words he carried. He did not watch them settle. He was already moving beyond them, into the next passage, the next crossing, the next quiet unfolding of connection. For a word, once carried, no longer belongs to where it began. And Hermes, who carries all things without keeping them, belongs to none of them at all. Only to the motion that continues, between every voice and every silence. Not all messages arrive with sound. Some are carried in the space that forms just before a word is spoken, or just after it fades. Hermes understood this without needing to learn it. As he moved between realms, he came to carry not only what was said, but what remained unsaid. The quiet intentions, the withheld meanings, the silences that waited for a place to settle. These were not lesser messages. They were often the truer ones. A spoken word declares itself. It takes shape, demands attention, fixes itself in the hearing. But silence moves differently. It passes without form, without boundary, and yet it lingers more deeply. It is felt rather than heard, recognised rather than understood. Hermes carried these with the same ease as any spoken command. When he crossed from Olympus to the mortal world, there were times when no voice accompanied him, no decree, no instruction, no articulated meaning. And yet, something arrived. A stillness where there had been unrest. A pause where thought had been scattered. A sense, difficult to name, that something had been placed gently within the world. This was his quietest work, to deliver what could not be spoken. He did not announce himself when he carried such messages. There was no need. His presence would have drawn attention away from what he brought, and so he moved more subtly, his passage nearly indistinguishable from the shifting of air or the soft turning of light. To those who were not listening, nothing occurred. To those who were, everything changed. A person might find themselves pausing without knowing why. A thought might emerge, not as something formed, but as something revealed. A decision might settle, not through reasoning, but through a quiet certainty that arrives without origin. These are the traces of silent messages. Hermes did not shape them, he allowed them to pass. The gods, though powerful in voice, did not always speak what they intended. There are meanings that cannot be given form, even among the divine. Desires left unspoken, warnings that exist only as feeling, intentions that remain just beyond articulation. Before Hermes, these remained where they began, unshared, unresolved. With him, they could cross, not as words, but as presence. When he carried silence from one realm to another, it did not diminish. It did not lose its meaning in the absence of language. It deepened, becoming something that could be received without being defined. This is why his passage often went unnoticed. There is little to see in the movement of silence. No figure to follow, no sound to mark its arrival. Only a change, subtle and lasting, in the shape of what is felt. Hermes did not linger to observe this change. He did not wait to see how what he delivered would take root. The moment of arrival was enough. The crossing was complete. He was already moving. Even among the gods, there came a quiet reliance on this unseen work. Not all messages were meant to be heard aloud. Some required the gentler path, the one that moves beneath thought, beneath speech, into the deeper spaces where meaning forms without being forced. Hermes became the bearer of these as well, not because he chose to, but because he was the only one who could pass without disturbing what he carried. A loud messenger alters the message. A silent one allows it to remain. In this way, Hermes moved through the world like a presence just beyond perception, felt in the pause between breaths, in the moment before understanding, in the quiet shift that cannot be traced back to any single cause. He delivered what could not be spoken, and in doing so, he revealed something deeper about the nature of connection, that not all bridges are built with words. Some are formed in silence, and these, though unseen, often endure the longest. Hermes, who never remained, left these behind without keeping them, messages that arrived without sound, and continued long after he had passed. To belong is to be held by a place, to remain is to be shaped by it. Hermes knew neither in the way others did. The gods, though vast, were not without anchor. Each had a dwelling that gathered their presence, a domain that defined the edge of their being. Olympus rose as a centre for many, its height a kind of stillness above the shifting world. The sea held its own god, the underworld its own keeper. Even the winds, though moving, returned to patterns that could be named. Hermes did not return. Where he paused, he did not stay. Where he passed, he did not remain. The idea of a home, a place that receives and holds, that remembers and gathers, did not take root within him. Not because he rejected it, but because nothing could contain what he was. He moved through Olympus as he moved through the earth below, briefly, without weight. The halls of the gods did not confine him. Their voices did not bind him. Even in their presence, he seemed already in passage, as though the space between one word and the next was where he truly existed. If he rested, it was only an appearance. A pause that resembled stillness, but was already dissolving into motion. There are those who wander because they have lost their way. Hermes wandered because there was no single way to hold. The world, in its slow awakening, began to sense this difference. Travellers would later walk the roads that formed in his passing, carrying with them the need to arrive somewhere. Home, destination, belonging. But Hermes moved without such need. Each place he entered was complete in the moment, and complete in its leaving. He did not gather memories in the way others would. He did not look back to where he had been with longing or reflection. The past did not pull at him. The future did not call him forward. He existed in the crossing itself. And so, he could never be absent. A god with a home may be found or not found, present or away. But Hermes was never entirely gone, because the spaces he occupied were not fixed. Wherever there was a boundary, between places, between thoughts, between states of being, there he was, not as one who arrives, but as the act of arriving. This is why he could not be claimed. Not by Olympus, though he walked its heights. Not by the earth, though he crossed its distances. Not even by the unseen realms, though he would one day pass through them as easily as breath passes through the body. He belonged to none, and so he moved through all. There is a quiet solitude in this kind of existence, not the solitude of isolation, but of continuity without rest. To never settle is to never fully gather. To never remain is to never be held in a single place long enough to become part of it. Yet Hermes did not resist this. He did not seek what he did not have. He continued. The idea of home requires stillness. It asks for a boundary that holds, a centre that does not shift. Hermes moved through centres without becoming one. He passed through boundaries without closing them. If there was any place that could be called his, it was the space that opened as he moved, the brief alignment of departure and arrival, the moment when one place gives way to another. But such a place cannot be returned to. It exists only as it is crossed. And so, Hermes remained what he had always been since his first step beyond the cave. A traveller, not defined by where he begins, not shaped by where he ends, but by the fact that he is always between. The world would come to understand this slowly. Roads would be built, cities would rise, homes would be made and named, and in all of these there would be an assumption, a quiet certainty, that one belongs somewhere. Hermes moved through these certainties without disturbing them. But he did not share them. He passed through doorways without staying, stood at thresholds without crossing inward, walked roads without seeking their end. His presence reminded the world of something it often forgot, that between every place of belonging there is a space of passage, and within that space there is no home, only movement. Endless, quiet and unclaimed. A crossing is not a place, it is a moment that refuses to remain. Between the realms of existence, there are no clear borders carved into the fabric of the world. No gates stand openly, no markers announce the shift from one state to another, and yet the divisions are real, felt in the weight of air, in the texture of silence, in the way light behaves when it nears what it cannot fully reveal. Most beings approach these boundaries and turn away. Hermes does not. He moves where the world thins. There are places where the ground seems less certain beneath the feet, where sound travels differently, where the distance between what is seen and what is sensed begins to narrow. These are not destinations. They are edges, fragile, shifting, difficult to hold. To cross such an edge is not to step forward. It is to allow one state to become another without resistance. Hermes understood this without learning it. His nature aligned with these moments of transition so completely that he did not experience them as thresholds to overcome. They were simply continuations of his movement, from Olympus to the mortal world, from the mortal world toward the unseen, from thought into word and word into silence. Each passage unfolded with the same quiet certainty. No effort, no hesitation, no break. To others, these crossings would feel like transformations, a change in being, a shift in form, a passage that alters what one is. But Hermes did not transform. He remained. It was the world that changed around him. The air would grow heavier or lighter, the light would dim or sharpen, the sense of presence would deepen or recede, but he moved through all of it without losing himself. He did not belong to the conditions he entered. He belonged to the act of entering itself. This is what allowed him to cross where others could not. The gods, though powerful, often carried the weight of their own nature. They were bound to what they were, sky, sea, earth, or shadow. To leave that nature behind, even briefly, required a kind of effort that few could sustain. Hermes did not carry such weight. He did not leave himself behind, because he was never fixed in a single form to begin with. And so the crossings opened to him, not as doors, but as continuities. There are moments when the world seems to pause, not in stillness, but in suspension. A breath held between inhalation and release, a silence that lingers just before something changes. These are crossings, though they are rarely recognized as such. Hermes moves within them constantly. To follow his path would not be to walk a road, but to notice these moments as they arise, to feel when one state is becoming another, when a boundary is no longer fixed, when the distance between 2 points has begun to dissolve. But such awareness is difficult to hold. It requires a presence that does not cling. Hermes does not cling, he passes. The crossing between worlds is not a single path, nor a permanent structure. It is an ever-shifting network of moments, appearing where needed, fading when not. No map can contain it. No memory can fix it in place. And yet, it is always there, waiting not to be found, but to be entered. When Hermes moves from the world of the living toward the deeper, quieter realms below, the shift is almost imperceptible. The air thickens slightly, sound recedes, and the sense of distance becomes more internal than external. But he does not descend as one entering a different place. He continues. And in that continuation, the world becomes something else. This is the nature of true crossing. It is not a break. It is a transition so complete it leaves no seam. Hermes embodies this without effort. His presence does not mark the boundary. It dissolves it. He does not stand at the threshold as a guardian. He is the threshold in motion, the fleeting moment when one reality gives way to another. And because he does not remain, the crossing remains open. Not fixed, not claimed, only possible. The world, shaped slowly by his passage, begins to understand that it is not divided as it once seemed. The realms do not exist apart from one another. They overlap, touch, and transform in ways that cannot be seen, only felt. Hermes moves within this quiet overlap endlessly, not to unite the worlds, not to separate them, but to pass between them, again and again, without ever arriving. There are journeys that begin with intention, and there are those that begin when intention ends. When life loosens its hold, when breath fades into something quieter, the path that follows is not chosen. It opens, slowly where the familiar dissolves. For most, this passage is uncertain, unseen, unmeasured, without direction. But it is not without a guide. Hermes does not call to the living, he waits where they will one day pass. At the edge of life, where the world thins and the boundaries of form begin to soften, there is a quiet moment, a pause between what was and what will no longer be. It is not marked by sound, it is not visible in the way other thresholds are, but it is felt, and in that moment Hermes is there, not as a figure who arrives, but as a presence that has always been waiting within the crossing. Those who pass into this space do not see him as one sees another being. They do not hear his voice in the way words are heard. Instead, they sense a direction where none had existed, a movement that does not require effort. This is how he guides, not by leading from ahead, but by becoming the path itself. The souls of the departed do not walk as the living walk. They do not measure distance in steps or time in moments. Their movement is different, quieter, more inward, as though the journey unfolds within them rather than around them. Hermes moves with them, or perhaps more accurately, they move within his passage. There is no urgency in this journey, no force that pulls, no resistance that holds. The path toward the underworld is not a descent of weight, but a gradual shifting, a movement away from the familiar into something that cannot be returned from. Hermes does not alter this, he ensures that it continues. Without him, the crossing would remain uncertain. The boundary between life and what lies beyond would hold its silence without direction. Souls might linger, not in place, but in hesitation, caught in the space where one state has ended, but another has not yet begun. Hermes prevents this stillness. He carries them through the moment where movement might otherwise cease. He does not speak to them. There is no need. What he offers is not instruction, but passage, a quiet continuity that allows the crossing to complete itself. In his presence, the unknown does not become known, but it becomes traversable. This is his role as guide. Not to explain, not to comfort, but to ensure that what begins continues. There is a tenderness in this, though it is not the kind that holds or reassures. It is a gentler form, one that does not interrupt the journey, but accompanies it without being seen. The souls do not remain with him. He does not lead them to a place where he stays. He carries them only as far as the crossing requires. And then, as always, he passes on. The underworld, vast and quiet, receives what arrives without question. It does not reach upward. It does not send for what has not yet come. Its stillness is complete in a way the living world can never fully understand. Hermes does not belong there. But he enters it without resistance, for even the boundary between life and death is not close to him. He moves along its edges, within its depths, across its unseen thresholds, as though they are no different from the spaces he has always crossed. To guide the lost is not to change their destination, it is to remove the possibility of being lost. Hermes does not decide where a soul will go, he ensures that it arrives, and in doing so he reveals something quiet and enduring about the nature of all journeys. That the most difficult part is not the distance, but the crossing, and that there is, within that crossing, a presence that does not hold, does not remain, but carries forward, without pause, into whatever lies beyond. The path downward is not marked by descent alone. It is marked by a change in what the world allows. There are regions where light thins, where sound softens, where the weight of being begins to loosen its hold. These places are not hidden, yet they are rarely seen for what they are. A valley where the air grows still, a riverbank where the current seems to hesitate, a cave where darkness does not simply obscure, but deepens. These are the beginnings of the path, not fixed, not singular, but recurring in quiet forms, wherever the boundary between life and what lies beyond begins to open. Hermes knows these places without seeking them. He arrives where the world yields. To the living, the path to the underworld is a story told in fragments, of rivers that must be crossed, of gates that must be passed, of a realm beneath that holds what cannot return. But before these images take shape, there is something simpler. A movement away, a soft withdrawing of the familiar. The colours of the world do not vanish, they recede. Sound does not end, it grows distant, as though heard from behind a veil. The body does not fall, it becomes less certain of where it begins and ends. Hermes moves within this change. He does not lead the way as a guide who stands ahead. He does not walk behind as one who urges forward. He is present in the shifting itself, the quiet continuity that allows the path to form as it is taken. The underworld does not lie at a fixed distance, it lies at a threshold that must be crossed. And that threshold is not a place that can be pointed to. It is a moment, stretched and deepened, where one state gives way to another without returning. Many approach it. Few understand it. None cross it alone. Hermes does not alter what awaits beyond. He does not soften the stillness that receives the dead, nor does he change the nature of what lies below. The underworld remains what it is, quiet, enduring, complete in its separation from the living world. But the path to it is his domain, not as a possession, as a passage. There are currents along this path that do not belong to water, movements that do not belong to wind. They carry without force, drawing the departing soul into alignment with what lies ahead. Hermes moves within these currents as though they were extensions of his own motion. At times the path narrows, becoming less like a place and more like a feeling. A subtle compression, as though the world itself is closing around the crossing, focusing it into a single direction. Hermes does not resist this narrowing. He becomes it. Where others might hesitate, sensing the weight of what cannot be undone, he remains unchanged. His presence does not deny the finality of the path. It allows it to unfold without interruption. There are images that would later be given to this journey: the river that separates, the ferryman who carries, the gates that divide. These are attempts to give form to what is otherwise without shape. They are not untrue, but they are not the beginning. The path begins earlier, in quieter places, in the moment when the world no longer holds in the same way, in the space where movement continues, though nothing seems to move. Hermes walks there, or rather, he passes through, as he always has, without claiming the path, without altering its nature. He does not linger at its edges. He does not stand as a guardian. He ensures only that it remains open, that the crossing can occur, that the movement does not cease. To follow this path is not to travel through distance, but to move through transformation. Each moment along it is both leaving and arriving, both ending and continuation. The living world fades not as something lost, but as something completed. Hermes does not look back upon it. He carries forward. The underworld draws nearer, though not in the way places draw near. It becomes more present, more certain, until the distinction between path and destination begins to dissolve. And at that final threshold, where the crossing is no longer a process but a state, Hermes remains only long enough for the passage to complete. He does not enter as one who stays. He does not depart as one who leaves. He continues. The path to the underworld does not end. It becomes something else. And Hermes, who belongs to what lies between, does not follow beyond it. He turns, not in direction, but in nature, back toward the spaces where crossings are still unfolding, where movement is still becoming, where the world has not yet closed its edges, for there are always more paths, and they are never finished. There is a difference between guiding and accompanying. One leads, the other remains beside. Hermes does not lead the departed in the way a figure points toward a destination. He does not stand ahead, drawing them forward into what they cannot yet see. Nor does he follow behind, urging them onward. He moves with them. Or perhaps more truly, he is the movement within which they pass. When a life releases its final hold, when the world loosens its grip, and the familiar begins to recede, there is a moment that does not belong to either state. It is neither life nor what comes after. It is something quieter, an interval where direction has not yet formed. This is where Hermes is felt most clearly, not as a presence that arrives, but as one that has always been there, waiting within the crossing. The departed do not always understand what is happening to them. The world they knew has softened, its boundaries no longer firm. What once felt solid becomes distant, as though seen through a shifting veil. Thought does not move in the same way. Time does not gather as it once did. And yet, there is movement. A gentle, continuous motion that does not require effort. This is Hermes. He does not explain the journey. He does not give form to what lies ahead. He allows the movement to continue without interruption. To walk with the departed is not to change their path, it is to ensure that the path remains open. There are no words exchanged in this passage, no reassurances, no instructions. The silence between Hermes and those he accompanies is complete, but it is not empty. It carries a quiet certainty, the sense that the journey, though unknown, is not without direction. This certainty does not come from knowledge, it comes from presence. Hermes does not hold the departed, he does not gather them, does not keep them near. His closeness is not one of attachment, but of alignment. He moves as they move, not beside them in space, but within the same unfolding transition. To those who might observe from a distance, if such observation were possible, it would seem as though the departed move alone. There is no visible guide, no figure casting a shadow or leaving a trace. And yet, they do not falter. They do not lose their way. Because Hermes is not separate from the path they follow. He is its continuity. There are moments in this passage where hesitation might arise, a subtle pause, a sense of holding at the edge of something irreversible. The familiar, though fading, still calls in quiet ways. The unknown, though approaching, remains without form. In these moments, Hermes does not intervene. He does not pull or push. He simply continues. And in that continuation, the hesitation dissolves. The movement resumes. This is his quiet gift. Not to remove uncertainty, but to carry it forward until it no longer holds. The journey of the departed is not a single path, nor a uniform passage. It unfolds differently for each, shaped by what cannot be seen from within the living world. But in all of these variations, one constant remains. The crossing must be completed. Hermes ensures this, without effort, without claim. He walks with them, until walking is no longer what is happening, until movement itself becomes something else, something that no longer belongs to the space between, but to the place beyond it. And then, as always, he does not remain. The moment the crossing is complete, his presence recedes, not as something that leaves, but as something that is no longer needed in that form. The path has fulfilled itself, the movement has reached its transformation. Hermes turns back, though not in direction. He returns to where crossings are still forming, where journeys are still uncertain, where the space between states still requires a presence that can move without being held. He does not carry the departed with him. He does not remember them as fixed points in his passage. For to remember in such a way would be to remain, and Hermes does not remain. He continues, always beside those who are passing, never staying with those who have arrived, a companion not of place, but of transition, walking with the departed, until walking itself is no longer needed. To return is not to undo what has been crossed, it is to carry the crossing within you. Hermes does not remain in the underworld, though he enters it without resistance. He passes along its quiet thresholds, moves through its depth, where sound is thinner and time holds a different weight, and then, without rupture, he returns, not upward, not outward, simply onward. The path from darkness is not the reversal of the path into it. What has been crossed cannot be uncrossed. The boundary between the living and the dead does not open in both directions in the same way. It yields to Hermes because he is not subject to its finality. He does not belong to what ends. He belongs to what continues. When he leaves the underworld, he does not carry its stillness as a burden. He carries it as a quiet alteration, something that has passed through him and left its trace without remaining. The weight of that realm does not cling to him, but it changes the way the world receives his movement. There is a difference, subtle but enduring, in the air that surrounds him after such crossings, a depth that was not there before, a silence that is not absence, but presence held in restraint. He does not pause to consider it. He moves. The return from darkness is not marked by light suddenly appearing. It is marked by the gradual re-entry of distinction, the way forms regain their edges, the way sound gathers itself again, the way distance resumes its familiar shape. Hermes passes through this without disruption. The world opens back into its layered brightness, but he does not change with it. He remains aligned with the crossing itself, not with the conditions on either side. To those who dwell in the living world, such a return might seem impossible. The underworld is imagined as a place of finality where once entered, one cannot depart. This is true for those who belong to it. It is not true for Hermes. He is not bound by arrival. He does not become what he passes through. And so, he returns without breaking the nature of what lies below. The stillness of the underworld remains complete. The separation holds. Nothing is undone. Hermes carries no souls back with him, no echoes of those who have crossed. He does not disturb the order of what is beyond return. He simply leaves the crossing open. This is his quiet work. To move through darkness without closing it, to move back into light without claiming it. In this way, he preserves the integrity of both realms, not by dividing them further, but by ensuring that their boundary remains a place of passage, not rupture. There are moments, rare and difficult to perceive, when the trace of his return can be felt. A stillness that lingers slightly longer than it should. A sense that something has passed through the unseen and come back unchanged. A brief alignment between what is known and what is not. These are not signs. They are remnants of crossing. Hermes does not announce that he has returned. He does not bring news from the depths, does not speak of what lies beyond. The underworld remains veiled, not because it is hidden, but because it cannot be translated into the language of the living. And Hermes does not translate. He carries only what can be carried. Silence when needed, movement always. The return from darkness does not end his passage, it deepens it. Each crossing leaves within him a subtle knowledge, not of what lies beyond, but of the nature of transition itself. He moves with a quiet certainty that does not come from understanding, but from continuity. He has passed where others cannot. And yet, he remains what he was before he passed. This is why he can return. Not because the path is open, but because he is the opening. The world receives him again without question. The wind resumes its tracing around him, the ground its brief yielding, the distances their soft dissolving. Nothing resists him. Nothing holds him. And still, something has changed. Not in him alone, but in the way the world recognizes him. He has moved through darkness and returned without carrying its weight. He has crossed a boundary that does not close, and left it as he found it, open to passage, closed to possession. And so he continues, as he always has, not marked by where he has been, not altered by where he returns, but defined by the fact that he moves between, even through the deepest of endings, without ever coming to one. A boundary is often mistaken for an end, but it is, more truly, a place where one thing becomes another. The world, in its early unfolding, did not understand its own divisions. Sky met earth without distinction. The living world brushed against the unseen without knowing where one ended and the other began. Even thought and silence moved together, indistinguishable in their origin. Over time, these separations grew clearer, not as walls, as thresholds. Hermes did not create these boundaries, he made them meaningful. Where others saw edges, he moved through them. Where others stopped, he continued, and in that continuation, the boundary revealed its deeper nature, not as a point of division, but as a place of passage. This is why he came to be known, quietly, as their keeper, not because he guarded them, but because he understood them. To keep a boundary is not to close it, it is to ensure that it remains what it is meant to be. A space where crossing is possible. If a boundary hardens, it becomes a barrier. If it dissolves entirely, it ceases to exist. Hermes moves between these extremes, maintaining the delicate balance that allows separation and connection to coexist. He does not stand at the edge as a sentinel, he becomes the edge in motion. Consider the meeting of land and sea. The shoreline shifts, never fixed, always responding to forces that cannot be seen from its surface. It is neither fully land nor fully water, but something in between, a place defined by its change. Hermes moves as the shoreline moves. He does not fix it, he does not erase it, he allows it to remain a place of transition. So it is with all boundaries, between day and night, between thought and word, between life and what follows it. Each is a moment where identity loosens and reforms, where what was gives way to what will be. These are not places to be held, they are places to be crossed. Hermes ensures that they remain crossable. This is a quiet responsibility. It does not require force, it does not draw attention. It exists in the subtle alignment of things, the way a boundary holds its shape without becoming rigid, the way it yields without disappearing. The gods, in their domains, often define themselves by what they contain. The sea is the sea because it holds its waters. The sky is the sky because it holds its expanse. But the boundary between them, the horizon, the shifting line where one meets the other, is not owned. It is kept by Hermes. Not as a possession, as a passage. There are moments when boundaries are tested, when one realm presses too strongly against another, when separation threatens to become collapse or conflict. In these moments, Hermes does not intervene as a force that pushes back. He moves through the tension. And in moving, he restores the balance, not by stopping the crossing, but by allowing it to occur in its proper form. For a boundary crossed too, forcefully becomes a rupture. A boundary never crossed becomes a prison. Hermes keeps them from becoming either. His presence is rarely noticed in this work. It is felt only as a quiet continuity, a sense that things remain connected without losing their distinction. The world holds together not because it is fixed, but because it flows, and Hermes moves within that flow, To call him a keeper is to use a word that suggests stillness, vigilance, watchfulness. But Hermes does not watch over boundaries. He passes through them, again and again. In doing so, he preserves their nature more completely than any act of guarding could. For a boundary is not meant to be defended, it is meant to be understood. And Hermes, who has never remained on one side of anything, understands this fully. The world, shaped by his passage, begins to reflect this understanding. The divisions that once seemed absolute reveal themselves as permeable, shifting, alive with possibility. The spaces between things are no longer empty, they are active, meaningful, necessary. And within all of them, Hermes moves, not holding, not stopping, but keeping the balance between separation and connection, so that the world does not close upon itself, nor dissolve into formlessness. A keeper, not of edges, but of their crossing. There are places that can be named, and there are spaces that exist only while they are being crossed. The world is often understood through what it contains: mountains, rivers, cities, skies. These are places that hold form, that can be returned to, that remain even when unobserved. But between them lie regions that do not hold in the same way. They are not empty. They are unclaimed. Hermes moves within these spaces as though they were the truest parts of the world, not because they are greater, but because they are less fixed. A road is not only the ground beneath it, but the distance it carries. A doorway is not only its frame, but the moment of passing through. A silence is not only the absence of sound, but the presence of what has not yet been spoken. These are the spaces in between. They do not remain when one tries to hold them. They exist only in motion. Hermes does not seek these spaces. He is drawn to them in the same way water is drawn to a slope, not by choice, but by nature. Wherever the world loosens its structure, wherever definition softens and becomes possibility, there he is. In the pause between two thoughts, in the breath between two words, in the step between departure and arrival. These are not places where one can stay. They are moments that must be passed. For most, they are unnoticed. The mind moves too quickly from one certainty to another, from one place of belonging to the next. The in-between is crossed without awareness, treated as something to be moved through as quickly as possible. Hermes does not hurry. He lingers, not in stillness, but in presence. To linger in such spaces is not to remain, but to fully inhabit the crossing. It is to experience the moment where identity loosens, where what is known gives way to what is not yet formed. This is where transformation begins, not in the places themselves, but in the space between them. Hermes carries this understanding without needing to express it. His movement gives it form. Wherever he passes, the in-between becomes more perceptible, not as something solid, but as something real. A traveller might feel it without knowing why. A moment of hesitation before choosing a direction. A quiet awareness that the path ahead is not yet fixed. A sense that the act of moving matters more than the place one is moving toward. These are the traces of Hermes, not visible, not measurable, but present. The spaces in between do not belong to any realm. They are not claimed by gods or shaped by mortals. They remain open, fluid, resistant to definition. And yet they are essential. Without them, there would be no connection, no transition, no change. Hermes moves within them endlessly, not to control them, but to ensure they remain what they are, spaces of possibility. There is a quiet paradox here. The more one tries to define the in-between, the more it disappears. To name it is to fix it, and in fixing it, it loses its nature. Hermes does not name these spaces. He passes through them, and in passing, he keeps them alive. The world, shaped slowly by his presence, begins to reflect this. It is no longer seen only in terms of what is fixed and known, but also in terms of what lies between, what connects, what transforms, what allows movement to occur. These spaces are not interruptions, they are the structure of becoming. Hermes does not remain within them. He cannot. To remain would be to turn them into places, and they are not meant to be places. They are meant to be passages. And so, he continues, moving through what cannot be held, crossing what cannot be named, existing within moments that vanish even as they occur. The spaces in between are where the world breathes. And Hermes is there in every breath, not as the air, not as the lungs, but as the movement between them. A crossroads is not a destination, it is a convergence of possibilities. Where one path divides into many, or many gather into one, the world pauses, not in stillness, but in openness. The ground holds more than a single direction. The air seems to wait, as though aware that something must be chosen, though nothing yet compels it. These places are older than roads. They existed before paths were worn into the earth, before travellers marked their passage with repetition. A crossroads is not made by footsteps. It is revealed by them. Hermes is drawn to such places, not to guide the choice, but to inhabit the moment before it is made. At a crossroads, movement becomes uncertain. The continuity of direction breaks, not into confusion, but into possibility. The traveller stands not between where they have been and where they will go, but between multiple futures, each equally present, each equally real in that suspended instant. Hermes does not resolve this tension. He holds it open. He does not point toward one path or another. He does not speak in a voice that compels decision. Instead, his presence deepens the awareness of the crossing itself, the fact that movement is not singular, that the world does not unfold along one fixed line. To watch a crossroads is not to observe from a distance, it is to be within it. Hermes does not stand apart from these places. He moves through them as he moves through all boundaries, without stopping, without claiming, yet fully present in the moment of transition. Those who pass through such places may not see him, but they feel something. A quiet heightening of awareness, a sense that the choice before them is not merely a matter of direction, but of becoming. The air feels different at a crossroads, not heavier, not lighter, simply more aware of itself. Sounds carry in unfamiliar ways. The ground, though unchanged, seems to hold a subtle tension, as though it remembers all the paths that have crossed there before. Hermes moves within this tension. He does not release it. He allows it to exist, for it is within this moment of suspension that true movement begins, not the continuation of what has already been decided, but the emergence of something new. A crossroads is a place where certainty loosens, where the path ahead is not yet fixed, where the traveller must move without knowing fully where they will arrive. Hermes understands this without needing to explain it. He has never followed a single path. He has never belonged to a fixed direction, and so he remains present in the place where all directions meet. There is a quiet stillness at the heart of a crossroads, not the stillness of rest, but of suspension. A moment where movement gathers before it unfolds. Hermes is there, not as a figure who waits, but as the awareness that the moment holds more than one possibility. He does not linger once the choice is made. When the traveller steps forward, when one path is taken and the others recede into what might have been, Hermes moves on. The crossroads returns to its quiet state, holding within it the memory of the choice, though not in a way that can be seen. The paths continue. The movement resumes. But the moment of openness, the true nature of the crossroads, remains only as something that has been passed through. Hermes does not remain to watch what follows. He is not concerned with outcomes. He belongs to the moment before them. This is why he is called a watcher. Not because he observes, but because he witnesses the instant where the world divides and reforms, where possibility becomes direction, where movement takes on meaning. He watches without holding. He witnesses without remaining. The crossroads, like all spaces in between, cannot be possessed. It cannot be fixed into a single form. It exists only as long as the paths converge, only as long as the choice remains open. Hermes moves through these places endlessly, never claiming them, never shaping them into permanence. He keeps them as they are, open, unresolved, alive with possibility. And in every crossroads, in every moment where paths meet and divide, his presence lingers, not as something seen, but as something felt. The quiet awareness that movement is never singular, and that every path begins in the space where all paths are still possible. Not all travellers walk with awareness, but some feel the movement before they understand it. Long after roads began to take shape upon the earth, after paths were worn by repetition and named by those who followed them, there remained something beneath the visible journey, something quieter than direction, deeper than destination. Those who travel far enough begin to sense it, not as a figure beside them, but as a presence within the act of moving itself. Hermes does not reveal himself openly to those who walk the roads. He does not stand at their side or speak their names. And yet there are moments, brief, difficult to hold, when the traveller feels less alone, though no one is there. A lightness in the step that was not there before, a sense that the distance ahead has softened, not in length, but in weight. A quiet assurance that movement itself is enough. These are the ways he is known, not through sight, but through experience. The traveller who has walked long distances understands something that cannot be taught. The road changes over time, not in its shape, but in its meaning. What begins as a path toward a place becomes something else entirely. A rhythm, a continuity, a state of being carried forward by motion itself. In these moments, Hermes is near, not as a guide who directs the way, but as the presence that makes the way possible. There are travellers who move with urgency, seeking an end, measuring their progress in steps and time. To them, the road remains heavy, something to be overcome. Hermes passes by them unnoticed, for they do not linger in the spaces where he is felt. But there are others, those who walk without pressing against the distance, those who allow the journey to unfold rather than forcing it forward. To these travellers, something shifts. The road becomes less a line and more a passage. The distance between steps becomes as meaningful as the steps themselves. The world, once fixed and divided, begins to feel connected in quiet, subtle ways. A horizon no longer feels distant. A crossing no longer feels uncertain. Movement becomes continuous. This is where Hermes is closest. Not ahead, not behind, but within the movement that carries the traveller onward. There are moments of fatigue where the body slows and the mind questions the path. In such moments, something quiet can be felt, not as strength, not as force, but as a gentle continuation. The next step comes, not because it is chosen, but because it unfolds naturally from the one before it. Hermes does not remove the difficulty of the journey. He dissolves the resistance to it. This is why he cannot be summoned. He does not arrive when called. He is present when the traveller aligns with the nature of movement itself. In the crossing of a river, in the passing of a threshold, in the moment before a decision is made, there is a brief clarity, a sense that the world is not as separate as it appears. These moments are fleeting, But they are enough. They are the traces of his passage. The traveller may not remember them clearly. They may pass like dreams upon waking, leaving only a quiet impression that something was understood, though it cannot be spoken. This is how Hermes remains present in the world, not through temples or offerings, but through the act of moving itself. Every journey carries the possibility of encountering him, not as a being, but as a condition, a way of moving that does not cling to where it begins or where it ends. The travellers who feel his presence are not those who seek him. They are those who move as he does, without holding, without resisting, without needing to arrive. And in that movement, they come closer to what he is, not by finding him, but by becoming, for a moment, part of the same passage. Hermes does not stay with them. He does not follow their journey to its end. He is there only as long as the movement remains open, as long as the space between steps is felt as something real. Then, as always, he passes on, leaving behind nothing that can be held, only the quiet understanding that the journey itself is never empty. Speed is often mistaken for haste, but there is a movement that requires no urgency at all. Hermes does not rush. He does not strain against distance, nor does he press forward with force. And yet, there are moments when his passage seems to outpace even the swiftest things, arriving where he is not expected, present where no path appears to lead. This is not speed as it is commonly understood. It is something quieter, more immediate. The speed of thought. A thought does not travel across space in the way a body does. It does not cross distances step by step. It appears whole, formed, already present where it was not before. There is no visible movement, no measurable progression, and yet it has moved. Hermes carries this quality within him. When he moves between realms, when he crosses from one state to another, his passage does not follow the length of the path. It follows the nature of connection. He does not traverse distance. He arrives through it. This is why his movement cannot be traced. A traveller might follow a road, marking each step, each turn, each crossing. Hermes leaves no such sequence behind. There is no beginning that can be pointed to, no middle that can be observed, no end that can be fixed. There is only presence. And then, absence. The world experiences this as swiftness, but it is not swiftness born of speed. It is swiftness born of continuity. For Hermes, there is no interruption between where he is and where he will be. The space between does not resist him. It does not delay him. It opens, and in that opening, he is already passing through. This is the same way a thought moves. It does not struggle to reach its destination. It simply becomes present there. The sandals at his feet, light and unburdened, reflect this quality. They do not propel him forward. They align him with the nature of movement that does not depend on effort. Where others would feel the stretch of distance, Hermes feels only the continuation of passage. There is no tension in his motion, no strain, no accumulation of time. This is why he can move between worlds without being altered by the distance between them. For him, distance is not a barrier to be crossed. It is a condition that dissolves in the act of crossing. To those who observe from within the limits of place and time, this appears as something extraordinary. A god who can move faster than wind, who can appear and vanish, who can carry words across realms in a single, seamless act. But this is only the surface of what is occurring. Hermes is not moving faster than the world. He is moving in a way that the world has not yet fully understood. There are moments when this quiet speed can be felt by others. A realization that comes all at once, without the slow building of thought. A decision that forms instantly, without visible process. a sense that one has arrived at an understanding that cannot be traced back to its origin. These are small reflections of the same movement, not carried by Hermes directly, but shaped by the nature he embodies, for the mind, in its own way, moves through the same spaces he does, the in-between, the crossing, the moment where something becomes something else, without visible transition. Hermes exists there, not within the thought itself, but within the movement that allows it to appear. This is why his speed is quiet. It does not draw attention to itself. It does not leave behind a trail that can be followed. It is felt only in the moment of arrival, and even then, only as something that has already occurred. He does not pause between movements, because there is no space between them that holds him. Each passage flows into the next without break, without hesitation, without the need to gather force or direction. This is not motion as effort, it is motion as nature. And in this way Hermes continues, not racing, not striving, but moving with a quiet immediacy. That carries him across all distances, without ever needing to cross them at all. There are beings defined by what they hold, and there are those defined by what they cannot hold at all. Hermes does not gather. He does not accumulate presence, memory, or place in the way others do. Where he passes, nothing is kept, not because it is lost, but because it is never meant to remain within him. He is not a vessel, he is a current. To be always moving is not to be restless. Restlessness seeks an end to itself, a place where motion can resolve into stillness. Hermes does not seek such an end. His movement is not a search. It is not driven by absence. It is complete in itself. This is why he does not tire. Fatigue belongs to effort, to resistance, to the tension between what is and what must be overcome. Hermes does not move against the world. He moves with it, within it, as though the world were already in motion, and he simply aligns with that movement more fully than anything else. Even when he appears to pause, the motion does not cease. It gathers inward, becoming less visible, but no less real. A still Hermes is not at rest. He is between movements that are already unfolding. The gods, though vast, often exist in a kind of permanence. Their presence settles into the domains they inhabit, shaping and being shaped by them in return. To encounter them is to encounter something fixed, something that remains even after one has turned away. Hermes does not remain. To encounter him is to encounter a moment already passing. This is why he is difficult to hold in story, difficult to define in form. Any attempt to fix him, to place him within a single role or image, begins to dissolve the moment it is made. He slips through definition as easily as he slips through space. Not because he resists being known, but because he exists where knowing itself is in motion. There is a quiet freedom in this, but also a distance. For to be always moving is to never be fully grasped, never fully gathered into the presence of others. Hermes touches all things, but belongs to none. He connects worlds, but does not remain within them. He carries meaning, but does not keep it. And yet, he is not separate. He is present wherever movement occurs, within every transition, every crossing, every shift from one state to another. The world is filled with such moments, though they are often overlooked. The turning of day into night. The fading of one thought into the next. The step that carries the body from one place into another. In all of these, Hermes moves, not as a force that drives them, but as the continuity that allows them to happen. To be always moving is to exist outside the measure of time as it is commonly understood. Time gathers around fixed points, around places where events begin and end. Hermes does not gather time in this way. He moves through it without holding it. Moments do not accumulate within him. They pass as he passes, leaving no residue that could become memory in the way others remember. He does not look back, because there is no fixed point from which to look. He does not look ahead, because there is no single destination to approach. There is only the movement itself. This makes him both near and distant. Near, because he is present in every act of transition. Distant, because he cannot be fixed into a single place or moment where he might be fully encountered. Those who try to find him as a figure, as a presence that can be met and held, will always arrive just after he has passed. Those who move as he moves, without clinging, without resisting, may feel him, briefly, in the act of movement itself. But even then, he does not remain. He continues. The world, shaped by his constant passage, learns slowly to reflect this nature. It becomes less rigid, less bound to fixed divisions. It reveals itself as something in motion, something that is always becoming rather than simply being. Hermes does not teach this, he embodies it. A god who is always moving does not stand apart from the world. He reveals what the world has always been, not a collection of places, but a continuous unfolding. And within that unfolding, he moves, without beginning, without end, without ever becoming still. Stillness is often understood as the absence of movement, but there is a stillness that exists inside motion itself. Hermes carries this within him. To watch him, if such a thing were possible, is not to see constant activity, not to witness an endless succession of steps or gestures. His movement is not restless, it does not scatter. It flows with a quiet coherence, as though every motion is already complete within itself, and within that flow there is a centre that does not shift, a stillness. This stillness is not separate from his movement, it is its foundation. Without it, his passage would become urgency, his crossing would become strain. But Hermes does not strain, he does not rush. His movement unfolds with a calm that does not belong to the absence of motion, but to its perfect alignment. A river, when it flows without obstruction, carries within it a similar stillness. The surface may move, the current may shift, but there is a deeper continuity beneath it, a sense that the movement is not chaotic, but whole. Hermes moves in this way. Every crossing, every transition, every passage from one state to another carries within it a quiet centre that does not waver. It is not something he creates, it is something he is. This is why his presence does not disturb what he passes through. Where others might bring change as force, as disruption, Hermes brings it as continuity. The world does not resist him, because he does not oppose it. He moves with such precision that the crossing becomes seamless, almost unnoticed. Stillness within motion allows this. It holds the movement together. There are moments when this stillness becomes perceptible to others. In the pause between breaths, when the body is neither inhaling nor releasing. In the instant between two thoughts, when the mind has not yet formed what comes next. In the space between steps, when the body shifts from one point of balance to another. These are moments of quiet suspension. Moments where movement exists without direction, without effort. Hermes is present there, not as something added, but as the nature of that moment itself. To find stillness in movement is to no longer resist the passage from one state to another. It is to allow change to occur without clinging to what is being left behind, and without reaching toward what has not yet arrived. Hermes does this without thought, without intention. It is simply how he moves. The world, shaped by his passage, carries this quality in subtle ways. The transitions between day and night, between sound and silence, between presence and absence, all hold within them a quiet balance. They do not break, they transform. This is the work of stillness within motion. to transform without rupture, to move without losing continuity. Hermes embodies this in every step, in every crossing, in every moment where the world shifts from one state into another. He does not hold the stillness as something separate from his movement. He carries it within the movement itself. This is why he cannot be fully grasped. To grasp something is to fix it, to hold it in place. Hermes cannot be held in this way because his nature is not fixed. And yet, within his motion, there is a presence that is constant, a stillness that does not change even as everything around it does. It is this stillness that allows him to move endlessly without becoming scattered, without losing coherence, without dissolving into the very motion he embodies. He remains whole, even as he passes through everything. Those who move with awareness may glimpse this, briefly. A moment where the act of moving no longer feels like effort. A step that carries itself, a thought that arrives without strain. In these moments, movement and stillness are no longer separate. They are one. Hermes exists there, not as a figure to be followed, but as a condition to be experienced. And then, as always, the moment passes. The world resumes its familiar divisions, movement here, stillness there, one state separated from another. But something remains. A quiet memory that they are not truly separate, that within all motion there is a stillness that holds it together, and within that stillness, Hermes moves, without ever leaving it behind. A road suggests a beginning and an end, a line drawn from one place to another, held in the promise that it leads somewhere. But there are roads that do not conclude. They do not arrive. They continue. Hermes moves along these roads, not as one who follows them, but as one in whom they unfold. The paths of the world, once faint and uncertain, have grown clearer through countless crossings. They wind across land and through thought, through the visible and the unseen. Yet for Hermes, no road is ever complete. Each is only a segment of a larger passage. The earth bears the marks of travel, worn ground, familiar turns, crossings remembered by repetition. To those who walk them, these roads appear fixed, dependable, shaped by those who have passed before. But beneath this appearance lies something quieter, a continuity that does not end at any destination. Hermes does not reach the end of a road and stop. He does not turn back in completion. Where a road seems to conclude, he continues through what lies beyond it into the next path, the next crossing, the next unfolding of movement that has no final point. This is why his journey cannot be measured, not in distance, not in time. Every arrival is also a departure. Every end is already opening into something further. The idea of a road ending belongs to those who seek to arrive. It belongs to those who move with purpose toward a fixed point, who measure their progress by how close they come to completion. Hermes does not measure. He does not complete. He continues. The roads that never end are not infinite in the way vast spaces are infinite. They are infinite because they are always becoming. They extend not by length, but by continuity, each moment of movement giving rise to the next without closure. To walk such a road is not to move toward something, it is to move within something, a passage that has no final form. Hermes embodies this passage. Where others see a destination, he sees a threshold. Where others arrive, he crosses. Where others stop, he moves through the pause into what follows. This does not make the road meaningless. It gives it a different kind of meaning. A road that ends fulfills its purpose and becomes still. A road that never ends remains alive, shifting, extending, open to new crossings that cannot yet be known. Hermes moves within this living network, not as a traveller bound to its paths, but as the presence that allows it to remain open. He does not create new roads. He reveals that they are never finished. There are moments when this can be felt. At the edge of a journey, when one believes they have arrived, there is sometimes a quiet awareness that something remains, not unfinished, but unclosed. A sense that the path does not truly end here, that it continues beyond what can be seen. This is the trace of Hermes. Not urging forward, not denying the arrival, but opening the space beyond it. The world, shaped by countless journeys, often seeks to define itself through endpoints, cities reached, goals fulfilled, boundaries established. But beneath these definitions lies a deeper truth, that every point of arrival is also a point of passage, that no place is final, that movement does not resolve into stillness, but transforms into another kind of movement. Hermes carries this truth without speaking it. He moves through every ending as though it were a beginning, and through every beginning as though it were already part of something that has no origin. The roads that never end are not visible in their entirety. They cannot be mapped or traced from start to finish. They exist only in the act of being walked, only in the moment of passage. And Hermes is always within that moment, not ahead, not behind, but within the unfolding itself. He does not seek where the road leads, he is what it leads into. And so he continues, across paths that do not conclude, through distances that do not resolve, along roads that do not end, because they were never meant to. They are not lines drawn across the world, they are the world in motion. And Hermes moves with them, without ever reaching a final place, where movement must cease. Distance is often understood as something that can be crossed, a span between 2 points, waiting to be reduced. But there is a distance that does not yield to measure, a distance that does not shorten, no matter how far one travels. Hermes moves within this distance as though it were not an obstacle, but a condition of being. For most, distance is felt as separation. It marks what is not yet reached, what lies beyond effort, what must be endured before arrival. It stretches between places, between moments, between states of understanding. It carries weight. Hermes does not carry this weight. He does not erase distance, he transforms it. To him, distance is not something that lies between 2 points. It is the space through which connection becomes possible. Without distance, there would be no movement, no crossing, no passage from one state into another. Hermes does not seek to overcome distance. He moves with it. The space between Olympus and the mortal world is vast, not in the way land stretches, but in the way meaning shifts. The distance between life and death is deeper still, not measured in steps but in transformation. Even the distance between a thought and its expression carries its own quiet depth. These are not distances that can be shortened by speed. They require something else. Continuity. Hermes embodies this continuity. He does not approach distance as something external to himself. He does not stand at one point and look toward another. He exists within the space between, where the distinction between here and there begins to dissolve. This is why distance does not delay him. It becomes the medium of his movement. There are moments when this can be felt, even by those who do not move as he does. A journey that seems long, yet passes without burden. A thought that reaches its conclusion without effort, though the path to it cannot be traced. A connection between 2 places or states that feels immediate, though no visible path links them. These are glimpses of distance without measure, not removed, but transformed. Hermes does not make the world smaller, he makes it more connected. In his presence, the separation between things loses its rigidity. The distance remains, but it no longer isolates. It becomes something that can be moved through without resistance. This is not the same as closeness. Closeness removes distance. Hermes preserves it. He allows distance to remain what it is, while revealing that it does not prevent passage. There is a quiet paradox in this. The farther one moves with Hermes, the less distance feels like something to overcome. And yet, the world does not collapse into a single point. It remains vast, layered, filled with spaces that cannot be reduced. But they are no longer barriers, they are continuities. This is the nature of distance without measure. It cannot be counted, it cannot be reduced to length or time. It exists as a condition of movement itself, something that gives form to passage without limiting it. Hermes moves within this condition effortlessly. He does not stand at the beginning of a journey and look toward its end. He is already within the space that connects them. This is why he can arrive without appearing to travel, why he can cross without leaving a trace, why his movement seems both immediate and continuous at once. To understand this is not to measure it, it is to experience it, to move without holding the distance as something separate from the movement itself. Hermes does this without awareness. It is simply his nature. The world, shaped by his passage, begins to reflect this truth. Distances remain, but they no longer define what is possible. The separation between things becomes less rigid, more fluid, more open to crossing. And in that openness, something changes, not the world itself, but the way it is moved through. Hermes continues within this immeasurable expanse, not reducing it, not escaping it, but carrying it as the very space in which movement unfolds, where every crossing is complete in itself, and every distance, no matter how vast, is already part of the passage. An endless journey is not one that fails to conclude. It is one that was never meant to. For those who walk the world with a destination in mind, the idea of endlessness carries a quiet weight. It suggests incompletion, a path that does not fulfill its purpose. But Hermes does not move toward fulfillment. He moves within continuation. From his first step beyond the cave to every crossing that followed, there has been no final point waiting for him. No place that gathers his movement into stillness. No moment where the journey resolves into arrival. And yet, nothing remains unfinished. Each passage is complete in itself. This is the nature of his endlessness. It does not extend forward in search of an end. It unfolds continuously, each moment fully formed, even as it gives way to the next. The world, shaped by beginnings and endings, struggles to hold this idea. It seeks closure, resolution, a place where movement can rest and meaning can settle. But Hermes offers something quieter. A journey that does not need to end to be whole. He does not look ahead to where he will go next. He does not look back to where he has been. He moves within the present crossing, where departure and arrival are not separate events, but a single continuous act. This is why his journey does not accumulate. Moments do not gather behind him as a trail. They pass through him as he passes through them. Nothing is carried forward except the movement itself. There are roads that stretch beyond sight, paths that wind through land and fort, crossings that connect worlds and states of being. Hermes moves through all of them, but none of them define his journey. For his journey is not made of places, it is made of passage. An endless journey is not bound by time in the way others are. Time, for most, marks progression, beginning, middle, and end. It measures what has been completed and what remains. But Hermes does not move within this measure. Time follows him, not as a sequence, but as a quiet unfolding that never gathers into a fixed line. There is no point at which his journey began, no point at which it will conclude. There is only the movement that continues. This does not make his journey without meaning. It gives it a different kind of meaning, not one that is found at the end, but one that is present in every step. Each crossing he makes is complete. Each passage fulfills itself. Nothing is left waiting for resolution. And yet, the journey does not stop. This is the paradox of endlessness: completion without conclusion, movement without final arrival. Hermes embodies this without effort. He does not question the absence of an end. He does not seek to define his path in terms of where it leads. He simply continues. The world, in quiet ways, reflects this truth. Journeys that seem to end often open into others. Paths that appear complete reveal new directions. The idea of finality softens, becoming less absolute, more like a transition than a conclusion. Hermes moves within this softening. He does not bring it about. He reveals that it has always been there. There are moments when this endlessness can be felt. At the close of a journey, when there is a sense that something remains open. At the beginning of a path, when it feels already connected to something beyond it. In the quiet understanding that movement does not truly begin or end, but continues through different forms. These are reflections of his passage, not visible, but present. Hermes does not carry the weight of an unending path. For him there is no weight in continuation, only flow. The endless journey is not something he endures, it is what he is. And so, he moves, through crossings that complete themselves, along roads that open into more roads, within a passage that has no edge, no boundary, no final resting place. Not because something is missing, but because nothing needs to be concluded. The journey is already whole. And it continues, without ever needing to end. Rest is often understood as the end of motion, a return to stillness after effort, a pause that gathers what has been spent. But Hermes does not move through effort, and so he does not rest in the way others must. His passage does not tire him, because it does not draw from a reserve that can be emptied. It does not strain against resistance, nor does it require recovery. Movement, for him, is not an act that begins and ends. It is a state that continues. The gods, though vast, are not untouched by stillness. They remain within their domains, their presence settling into the spaces they inhabit. Even in their power, there are moments of quiet, times when nothing is carried, nothing is moved, nothing is required. Hermes knows no such interval, not because he is compelled, but because there is nothing to pause from. He does not step out of movement. He is within it, always. As a messenger, this continuity reveals itself in quiet ways. Words do not wait within him. They do not gather, held for a moment before being delivered. The act of receiving and the act of delivering are not separate. They are one motion. A message enters his passage and leaves it without delay, without interruption. There is no interval where it rests, no space where it is held. It moves. As he moves. This is why he cannot be burdened by what he carries, for he carries nothing in the way others carry. There is no weight. Only passage. The idea of rest belongs to those who move from one state into another, who exert, who arrive, who pause, who begin again. Hermes does not move in this sequence. There is no beginning that demands an end, no end that requires renewal. His motion is continuous, unbroken, without the need for transition into stillness. And yet, there is a quiet calm in this, a stillness that exists within the movement itself. He does not rush, he does not strain. His passage is as effortless as the turning of the world, as constant as the shifting of light across the sky. These things do not rest, and yet they are not restless, they are simply in motion. Hermes moves in the same way. To those who seek him, this can feel elusive. A figure who cannot be found waiting, who does not remain in any place long enough to be encountered. By the time one arrives, he has already passed. By the time one listens, The message has already been delivered. He is never where he was, and never fixed where he is. This is not absence, it is continuity. Even when no message is given, when no words are carried between gods or mortals, Hermes continues. His role as messenger is not limited to spoken things. He carries transitions, crossings, the subtle shifts that move unseen through the world, the turning of a thought, the moment before a decision, the quiet passage from one state of being into another. These are messages without words, and they do not wait. He moves with them, always. There is no moment where he sets them aside, no place where he rests from their movement, because their movement is his own. The world, shaped by this unceasing passage, learns to reflect it in quiet ways. Movement becomes more than effort. It becomes something that can exist without strain, without the need to resolve into stillness. A river does not rest between its source and its end. The wind does not pause between one place and another. They continue, not because they are driven, but because they are movement itself. Hermes is the same. There is a kind of solitude in this endless continuity, not the solitude of separation, but of being beyond the need to stop. To rest is often to return, to gather oneself, to settle into a place or a moment. Hermes does not return in this way. He does not gather. He does not settle. He continues, and in that continuation, he remains untouched by the cycles that define others, the beginning of motion, the exhaustion of effort, the return to stillness. He moves outside this rhythm, or perhaps more truly, he reveals a deeper rhythm beneath it, one that does not divide movement and rest, but holds them within a single continuous flow. This is why he does not rest, not because he cannot, but because there is nothing in him that requires it. His movement does not deplete. It does not fragment. It does not seek completion. It is already whole. And so, the messenger continues, not pausing between words, not stopping between crossings, not gathering himself between journeys. He carries all things without holding them, moves through all places without remaining, and passes through every moment without needing to rest within it. For in him, movement has no opposite, only continuation, endless, unbroken, and complete in every instant. The world is often imagined as divided, sky above, earth below, depths beneath. Realms separated by distance, by nature, by the boundaries that define what belongs where. But there are moments when these divisions soften, when one world does not end before another begins, when they overlap. Hermes moves within these moments as though they were the true structure of existence, not as exceptions, but as the underlying nature of all things. The boundaries between realms, Olympus and the mortal world, the living and the unseen, are not fixed lines. They are shifting, responsive, changing with the conditions that shape them. There are places where the sky seems closer to the earth than it should be, where the air carries a weight not entirely its own, where the visible and the invisible touch without fully merging. These are not illusions, they are intersections. Hermes does not force these overlaps, he passes through them, and in doing so, he reveals that the world is not made of separate layers stacked upon one another, but of presences that move through and within each other continuously. A shadow is not separate from the light that defines it. A thought is not separate from the silence that surrounds it. A living being is not entirely apart from what lies beyond life. All things exist in relation, and where relations deepen, overlap begins. Hermes is present in these deepening spaces, not as a mediator, but as the movement that allows one state to touch another without breaking. There are moments when this becomes perceptible, a place where the air feels different, not heavier, not lighter, but layered. A moment when the world seems to hold more than one reality at once. A quiet sense that what is seen is not all that is present. These are not disruptions. They are openings. The worlds overlap not to collapse into one another, but to allow passage between them. Hermes moves within this passage effortlessly. He does not become part of one world at the expense of another. He does not belong more to the divine than to the mortal, more to the living than to the dead. He exists where these distinctions meet and soften. This is why he can carry meaning across realms without altering it beyond recognition. He does not translate one world into another. He allows them to touch, to overlap, and in that overlap, something new becomes possible. A message that can be understood in more than one way. A presence that can be felt in more than one realm. A movement that does not belong entirely to any single state of being. Hermes embodies this multiplicity without division. He is not fragmented by the worlds he crosses. He remains continuous, even as he passes through layers that would divide others. This continuity is what allows the overlap to remain open. Without it, the worlds would either separate completely or collapse into one another. Hermes keeps them in relation, not by holding them together, but by moving between them. There are places where this movement becomes more visible, crossroads where decisions shape the path ahead, thresholds where one state gives way to another, moments of transition where the world seems to hesitate before continuing. In these places, the overlap is strongest. The boundaries are thinnest, and Hermes is closest, not as a figure who stands within them, but as the condition that allows them to exist. The world, when seen in this way, is not a series of separate realms, but a continuous field of intersections, places where meanings meet, where states shift, where movement flows from one form into another without final division. Hermes moves within this field endlessly. He does not seek to unify the worlds into a single whole, nor does he preserve their separation as something absolute. He allows them to overlap, to touch, to pass through one another without losing their identity. This is a quiet balance, one that requires no force, no intervention, no control, only movement, only passage, only the continuous crossing that keeps the spaces between worlds alive. Hermes does not remain in any single layer of existence. He is always at their meeting point, where the world is more than one thing at once, where reality is not fixed, but shifting, where what is known and what is unknown touch briefly, and then separate again. And in every such moment he moves, not to hold the worlds together, not to pull them apart, but to pass between them, keeping the overlap alive, so that the world is never fully closed, and never entirely divided. There are moments that can be named, and there are those that exist only in passing. The world is often understood as a sequence, one event following another, one state giving way to the next. Time is divided into parts, each held briefly before it is replaced. But between these parts, there are intervals so subtle they are rarely noticed. They do not last. They do not remain. And yet, they are always there. Hermes moves within these intervals as though they were his truest domain, not the moments themselves, but what lies between them. The instant before a thought forms, the pause after a word is spoken, the breath between what has ended and what has not yet begun. These are not empty spaces, they are thresholds of becoming. Hermes does not enter them from outside, he is already there. To exist between moments is to move without being contained by time. It is to pass through the divisions that give time its structure without being held by them. Hermes does not experience time as a sequence to be followed. He experiences it as a continuous unfolding. This is why his presence cannot be fixed. By the time one recognizes it, it has already moved. By the time one seeks it, it has already passed, and yet it is never absent. For the intervals between moments do not cease to exist. They are simply overlooked. There are rare instances when these intervals become perceptible. A hesitation before a decision where the outcome has not yet taken form. A silence that feels fuller than sound, as though something is present without being expressed. A brief stillness where time seems to loosen its hold, not stopping but softening. In these instances, Hermes is closest, not as a figure that appears, but as a condition that is felt. To dwell in such a space is not to remain, it is to pass through with awareness. Most do not linger there. The mind moves quickly, eager to complete the sequence, to fill the silence, to resolve the uncertainty. The interval is crossed without notice, treated as something to be left behind. Hermes does not hurry. He inhabits the crossing fully, though he does not remain. For these intervals are not places to stay, they are moments of transition, where what is becoming has not yet taken shape. This is where possibility is most open, where the world is not yet defined by what it will be. Hermes moves within this openness effortlessly. He does not shape what emerges. He does not direct the outcome. He allows the transition to occur without interruption. This is his presence, not as influence, but as continuity. The intervals between moments are where the world breathes, where it shifts from one state into another without breaking, without collapsing, without losing coherence. Hermes ensures that this breath continues, not by holding it, but by moving with it. There is a quiet paradox here. These intervals are the most fleeting aspects of existence, yet they are also the most constant. Every moment is bordered by them. Every change passes through them. They are never absent, though they are rarely seen. Hermes exists in this same way, always present, never fixed. To understand him is not to look for him in the moments themselves, but in what connects them. In the passage that allows one state to become another, one thought to give way to the next, one breath to follow another without break. He is not within time as a sequence, he is within the transition that makes sequence possible. And so, he moves. Between what has been and what is not yet, within the smallest divisions of existence, where change is most subtle and most complete, he does not linger, he does not remain. But in every passing interval, in every moment that dissolves even as it forms, his presence is there, quiet, unseen, and continuous. The presence between moments is not something that can be held, but it is something that carries all things forward, and Hermes moves within it, without ever stepping outside it. A path suggests direction, a movement from what is known into what is not. But there is a path that does not lead away from anything. It does not begin at a single point, nor does it end in one. It continues. Hermes moves within this path as though it were not separate from himself, not something he follows, but something that unfolds with him, without edge, without boundary, without final shape. All the roads he has crossed, all the thresholds he has passed through, all the messages he has carried, none of them gather into a destination. They do not form a single line that can be traced from origin to end. They remain open, each crossing, complete in itself, each passage already part of something that does not conclude. The world, shaped by beginnings and endings, struggles to hold this idea. It seeks closure, a place where the path can be said to arrive, where movement resolves into stillness. But Hermes does not arrive in this way. He does not reach the end of the path. He reveals that it does not end. There are moments when a traveller believes they have reached the final point. the place where the road ceases, where nothing lies beyond. A city, a threshold, a conclusion shaped by expectation. And yet even there, something remains open, a quiet continuation, not visible, but present. Hermes moves within that presence, not urging forward, not denying the arrival, but carrying the path beyond what can be seen. The path that continues forever is not infinite in length, it is infinite in nature. It does not extend endlessly outward. It renews itself in every moment of movement. Each step does not bring one closer to an end. It reveals that there is no final point to approach. This does not make the journey without meaning. It makes meaning present in every crossing. Nothing is deferred. Nothing is held for later completion. Each passage fulfills itself. And yet, the path remains open. Hermes embodies this without effort. He does not question the absence of an end, nor does he seek to define his movement by where it leads. He moves because movement is continuous, because the space between places is never closed, because the world itself does not rest in a final form. There is a quiet acceptance in this, not resignation, but alignment. To move along a path that never ends is not to wander without purpose. It is to move without needing purpose to be fixed in a destination. Hermes does not seek completion. He exists within completion that does not conclude. The path continues through every world he crosses, through the heights of the gods, the shifting lands of mortals, the quiet depths below. It passes through thought, through silence, through the spaces between moments where time itself loosens. It is not confined to any realm. It is not owned by any being. It is the condition of passage itself. Hermes does not walk this path alone. Though he does not remain with those who travel it, though he does not guide them in ways that can be seen, his presence exists within every act of moving from one state into another. Every journey reflects this endless path, whether it is known or not. Every crossing carries its continuity. The traveller who senses this does not reach an end. They begin to understand that there is none to reach. That movement itself is not leading elsewhere. It is revealing what has always been unfolding. Hermes moves within this unfolding endlessly. Not toward something, not away from something, but within the path that continues, because it cannot do otherwise. There is no final horizon. No last threshold, no closing of the road, only the quiet extension of movement into what follows, and what follows after that, without interruption. And in this, Hermes remains what he has always been, not a traveller who seeks to arrive, but the passage that never ends, moving through every crossing, through every boundary, through every moment where the world becomes something else, and continuing, not into the distance, but into the endless unfolding of the path itself. A path that does not lead away, does not return, does not conclude, but continues, forever. There are gods who shape the world by what they hold, and there are those who shape it by what they allow to pass. Hermes belongs to the latter. He does not remain in temples, though his presence may be felt at their thresholds. He does not reside in a single story, though his movement passes through all of them. He cannot be fixed into an image without already beginning to slip beyond it. For he is not a god of place, he is a god of passage. Across the long unfolding of myth, his presence has never been marked by stillness. He does not claim dominion in the way others do. He does not gather followers by holding them close. He appears where something is shifting, where a boundary softens, where a message moves, where one state gives way to another. And then he is gone, not vanished, but already elsewhere within the next crossing. To understand him is not to find where he stands, it is to notice where something is changing. A thought becoming a word, a journey becoming something more than its destination, a moment opening into what follows it. In these quiet transitions, his presence endures, not as a figure to be seen, but as a continuity that cannot be broken. The ancient world named him messenger, guide, keeper of boundaries. These names, though incomplete, gesture toward something deeper, the recognition that the world is not made only of what is fixed, but of what moves between. Hermes is that movement, not forceful, not disruptive, but constant. He reminds us, though never directly, that the spaces we overlook, the pauses, the crossings, the in-between, are not empty. They are where change happens, where meaning shifts, where the world reveals that it is never fully still. In this way, he is less a god to be worshipped, and more a presence to be noticed. Faintly, briefly, and then allowed to pass, for he does not remain with those who seek to hold him. He moves with those who continue. And so his story does not end. It cannot, because it is not a story that concludes. It is a passage that persists, in every road that opens, in every boundary that yields, in every moment that becomes another. Hermes is there, not waiting, not watching, but moving, quietly, endlessly, between all things. And then, already gone.